Standing By. The Terry and Ted podcast is sponsored by Jaguar Land Rover Laval, because you're probably going to move up north at some point anyway, so you might as well drive a Land Rover and fit in.
No, that's Bewitched. That's not going to work.
That's already done.
Yeah.
By the way, did we do too much of that? Are we going to get charged for that?
No, I think it's 15 seconds.
Oh, is that
yeah,
right? Is it 15 seconds, Poseidon? You don't know?
You could use 15 seconds of licensed music without having to pay a royalty or something.
We could use the music from that amazing little mini film that Phil did for us.
Yeah.
That thing?
That was good.
Yeah.
Wait till you see that. Well, maybe you've seen it already.
Well, you've seen it already, because this is episode 2
That's
of
true.
Standing By.
The Terry and Ted podcast.
Yeah, how about that? I must admit, during episode 1, I had a bit of a schwitz because I was a little nervous. I think that's healthy.
I didn't smell anything.
Okay.
Oh, a schwitz. Like a sweat.
Yeah. I was a little nervous and unsure of myself, perhaps because I haven't been in front of a microphone since the 28th of May.
Yeah, or maybe you have mental problems that need to be addressed.
That could be.
Well,
that could be.
Could look into that. Yeah.
So in the episode, the first episode, we talked about the beginning. I know we did say it's the story of Terry and Ted.
In the beginning, God created the Terry and the Ted.
That's exactly
and
right.
it was good.
Remember when that
sometimes.
That used to be great for mail, remember?
What's that?
Well, if you made any kind of reference to religion, the mail would not pour in, but we would get, what did we call them? How can you possibly?
How can you possibly?
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
We should explain that.
Well, Terry and I worked back in the day before social media, when if you offended someone, they actually had to put pen to paper, write their letter of complaint, go down to the post office, get an envelope and a stamp, put it in the mailbox, and then sit there and wait and hope that you received their letter and that they would hear back from you. And we called them How Can You Possibly, because they always started off with, how can you possibly say that the blah, 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 blah,
I was listening on Wednesday morning at around 8:30, and you said that you made a joke about our Savior and God, and how could you possibly make fun
of the Lord? And then fax machines came along.
Oh, yeah.
So then the complaints became more instantaneous.
Right.
But they still had to. It still involved something more than just pulling your phone out and going, "Fuck you guys, you suck. I'm gonna get you canceled."
The webnet.
Oh boy, the interwebs.
I'd like to talk a little bit on this episode, Ted, about some of because I get asked about this all the time, is about some of the interactions we had with not just music stars, but I would like to talk about some of the great experiences we had with the Habs, the Montreal Canadiens.
Did we have great experiences with the Habs?
All right, I'll tell the stories.
Okay. You tell the stories, and I'll try to remember them. How does that sound?
I would like to start with...
Get up close to your microphone there, or Poseidon's going to come over here and whack you.
Kicked.
Yeah.
I would like to start with Jean Belleville.
Oh, yeah.
Jean Belleville, I can't say enough things about Jean Belleville. I remember not too long, I was in Winnipeg I was in Manitoba to get my start in broadcasting, and I came back to Montreal in 1984, and I think probably in the spring of 85, I'd only been here a couple of months, and I was standing near the terminus in Atwater. The Atwater terminus across the street from the Forum, when the Forum was still the Forum, and the escalators were still lit at night. And out of the side door on Lambert Closs emerged Jean Belleville, dressed to the nines in a beautiful suit and carrying a briefcase. And that man had such an elegance about him.
That's the perfect word to describe him.
That his walk, his gait was even elegant.
Yeah.
And I was momentarily dumbfounded. I'd grown up, caught the tail end of his career, and I was watching him emerge from the legendary Montreal Forum. The legendary Jean Belleville emerges from that building. And I watched him walk down St. Catherine Street, and I thought to myself, I'm never going to have another Montreal moment like this. And not too long afterwards, we were trying to put together a radiothon for the Missing Children's Network at a time when it's not like we invented the radiothon, but Rob Braid, who was our boss at the time, said, why don't we do a telethon on the radio? Because there was telethons, Jerry Lewis, and the one they did on CFCF TV for the Kids Network. And we wanted to raise money for the Missing Children's Network for Susan Armstrong and Marcel, her partner, who had founded this organization, and they were working out of the back of a car. Their office was a car, and they were working out of the trunk of the car. And we were trying to raise money for them, and nobody knew what a radiothon was. Nobody would help us. Everybody we called, all the artists that we called, we want you to come and appear. We're going to be broadcasting from 9 to 6 at Place Bonaventure. Nobody would help us.
What was their problem?
Well, nobody knew what we were doing.
Okay.
They didn't, you're going to be on the radio, but you're going to be broadcasting, and nobody's going to see anything. All
right. Well, never mind that I even asked that question, because I sense where this is going. Yeah. So keep going.
And someone made a phone call and got a hold of Monsieur Belleville, and as soon as he heard that it was for children and missing children, he said, I'll be there. Of course I'll be there. When do you need me? And as soon as he agreed to come, and he promised that he would come for about a half an hour, and that we could mention he was coming, and of course, that created such a crowd of people who all wanted to either have their picture taken with him or meet him or get him to sign autographs. And if you've ever seen Jean Belleville's autograph, even his signature
is elegant.
Yeah. It has his display of elegance. And I remember him sitting next to me for the interview to talk about his daughters and how he was glad to support this new organization. And kindness came off his body. When you sat next to him or you were near him, you had this interaction with him, you felt the decency and the kindness that was so much his character. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm sitting next to Jean Belleville while he's answering my question. And I lose my place, because you have to, it's nice to have those moments, but you have to stay focused in that moment when you realize who you're talking to and who's sitting next to you. And I will never forget that. And I had some more interactions with him, not dissimilar, met him at a golf tournament, and, he was kind to my father. And I remember thinking to myself how lucky we were that these opportunities were presented to us because of where we worked.
Yep.
And I don't know if you were with me when we convinced Corey Hart. Were you part of the program then?
No, it might have been before my time.
Yeah. We convinced, I spent a lot of time making fun of Corey Hart because he never went out in Montreal at the height of his fame. And Corey was very, very, Corey's a wonderful guy. He's a very decent guy and has a great sense of humor. As a matter of fact, he'd be a fun guest. Maybe we can have him on one time. And I used to make fun of him hiding from, because everywhere he went at the beginning of his career, he created a stir. Mm-hmm. Fans would chase him
back in the 80s.
Yeah, chase him down the street and stuff. And but we convinced him to come to the Montreal Forum. Somehow, the Montreal Forum allowed us to broadcast from the lobby of the Forum while the Canadians were on the road. And Corey Hart agreed to come, I think, because we were broadcasting at the Forum. And at that broadcast, Larry Robinson emerged from the bowels of the Forum. He was there getting therapy because he was injured and didn't travel with the team. And Larry Robinson, whom I watched when I was a kid every Saturday night, leaned over and said to me, "Would you like to see the dressing room?"
No, I'm good, thanks. Beat it, old timer.
And if you're a Habs fan, if you live in Montreal, even if you live in Chicago,
Well, it doesn't matter where you
Doesn't
live.
matter
If you're
where
a
you
hockey
live.
fan and someone offers you a tour, a Montreal Canadian offers you a tour of their
Right.
dressing room.
of the dressing room in the Montreal Forum.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, I think, were back in an era where the players were less afraid of media, and understandably so because of today's climate and social media. But that also led us to we were able to get like Guy Carbonneau on the phone and Ludwig on the phone, and it was an era that just seemed to be a lot easier to interact with people from, who were boyhood idols.
Just so you know, because you're not wearing headphones,
Yeah.
we're getting
I'm
a lot
banging
of
the desk.
there's a lot of ambient noise.
Very good.
Yeah.
Also, if you were familiar with the beginning of my career,
Yes. Oh yeah. The rustling of the papers. Yeah. Yeah. Were you not wearing headphones, so you didn't hear the rustling of the papers?
I don't remember. It just never bothered me, but it was back when it was a...
Anyway, I just wanted to point. I'm not. It's not a
Yes.
criticism. I'm just saying. You're
So,
blah, bloop.
I tell those stories because of how lucky we were, and I would like you to tell a couple of your stories, because the other day, my wife and I were talking, and I extended my pinky finger to her, and she said, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I was holding my pinky out, and she said, "What is that? What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, it's a story I got to get Ted Bird to call and tell." And since we're telling sports stories, I've opened the door.
Okay, I've got that one, and I've also I'll also tell the Yvon Cornway golfing story, which is a good one too.
Alrighty.
So the story with the pinky finger.
Yes.
1980s. I'm covering the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm living in Toronto, working as a sports reporter at CFTR Radio, and I'm covering Blue Jays games. And I'm down in the clubhouse after the game one day, and Cliff Johnson, who was he was a big man, Cliff Johnson. He was a designated hitter for the Blue Jays, and he's standing by his locker and he's holding a beer. And Marty York from the Globe and Mail, who to this day I still I interact with Marty on Twitter quite a bit. Good guy. And Marty York walks over to Cliff Johnson and he goes, he sticks out his hand. He goes, "Cliff, Marty York, Globe and Mail." And Cliff Johnson, holding his beer, goes, extends his pinky finger with the hand that's holding the beer. And Marty, not sure what to do, takes the pinky finger and shakes it. Nice to meet you. That's a pretty good pinky shake you got there.
You just had, didn't you just get blocked by Rod Carew?
Yeah,
Speaking of baseball
first
stories?
Hall of Fame block on Twitter. Yeah,
Yes, tell that story.
Well, same era, early 80s. I'm covering the Blue Jays. The California Angels are in town. It's just before the All-Star break, and Rod Carew has been named to the All-Star team, the American League All-Star team. And I'm down in the Angels clubhouse, and I'm looking. This is pregame. Who can I interview? Oh, look, there's Rod Carew. I'll interview him about getting named to the All-Star team. So I walk over, and I stick out my hand. I go, "Hi, Rod, Ted Bird, CFTR Radio." And he's fiddling around in his locker and putting stuff away and taking
his back
stuff
to
out.
you?
No, he's like, his side is to
Okay.
me. It's from the side.
Yeah, gotcha.
And he doesn't even look at me.
Right.
He doesn't even look at me.
Right.
And there's this sort of uncomfortable pause, and I don't remember if he said, "Well, what do you want?" or anyway, I said to him, I was just wondering if I could interview you about getting named to the All-Star team. No. Okay, well, thanks. Good chat. Good to see you, and fuck you, pal. And
You didn't say that.
no. But fast forward, that would have been like 1983, probably, maybe 84. So fast forward, however many years it is since then, and he's here. I see him on Twitter a few months ago, a video on Twitter. "Hi, everybody, I'm on Twitter now, and I was hoping maybe you could follow me." And he's like 70 years old or whatever he is now. And so I responded, and I told exactly that story. I said, "I met you in the Angels clubhouse in 1983. I was a radio reporter, and I asked you to, I extended my hand and asked you if I could do an interview with you and introduce myself, and you ignored both gestures. So I'll pass. Thanks very much on following you on Twitter. And then for whatever reason, his name came across my Twitter timeline again more recently, and he had blocked me.
There you go.
Okay, I got blocked by a Baseball Hall of Famer.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking maybe I can put together I can get blocked by an all-star team of Hall of Famers. I've got to start on my infield. We'll see who's next.
This is something that you and I have talked about before, and something that I still don't understand. Most sports reporters will tell you that baseball players are the most difficult people to interact with.
I would
by
say,
and large,
in my experience, and again, I haven't gone into a clubhouse to do interviews in 35 years, so I don't know how much it's changed. But back in the day, yes. But I don't want to paint them all with the same brush.
No, it's generalized,
because there were a lot of really nice guys, and some of the biggest stars were the nicest guys. Tony Gwynn, God rest his soul, was a hell of a nice guy. Yeah. Ozzie Smith was a nice guy.
Yeah, I've got a picture of me that I've posted on social media before. I'm in the Expos dugout with Tim Wallach and Tim Raines, and I wish we were shooting something for a kids show I was doing at the time called Switchback, and if you look back on it today, Tim Wallach and Tim Raines, I mean, that's quite a picture.
Yep.
But I'm wearing gray sweatpants and white socks and loafers.
That was your uniform in the 1980s.
Which is really, really unfortunate. But did you have the same kind of vibe that I did? I still really haven't lost it. When Larry Robinson, when I first started to meet people, like Larry Robinson and Jean Belleville, I turned into I tried to be professional, but inside my body, I was 11 years old.
Yeah, well, I mean, I understand. I get that, but at the same time, I always tried to, and I got to this place pretty quickly because I think as a sports reporter, like with your Wallach and Tim Raines thing, that was a prearranged thing where you were doing something different. I was a pain in the ass reporter,
right?
And, a lot of those guys didn't like dealing with the media. So very quickly I learned that, they're just human beings and they're big stars and stuff. One of my favorite experiences when I first came to Montreal, I was interviewing Larry Robinson after practice one day. And after I was done the interview, he said to me, what time do you get up in the morning? I was like, what? And I said, around 3:30 or so. He said, yeah, I figured you must start early because I listen to you when I'm in the barn feeding the horses in the morning. And I just about shit gumdrops. Yep. And I ran straight home and phoned my father and said, Larry Robinson listens to me.
Just like that.
Yeah, that was so exciting to me. He's the nicest man.
Oh, my God.
He's such a nice man, Larry Robinson.
He tweeted about me one time, and I had it printed and framed.
Let me tell the Yvon Cornway story, because this is a classic. Early 90s at Shome, we had an auction, a fundraising auction for, I don't know what the charity was for, but it was to raise money for a charity. You could bid on an opportunity to go golfing with Ted Bird from Shome, big deal, a Bell Canada representative, and Yvon Cornway, Montreal Canadiens Hall of Famer and 10-time Stanley Cup champion. So ultimately, a guy named Mark Mintzberg had the winning bid. And so I went out, and I'm not a golfer. I think it was actually the first time I had ever literally gone out on a golf course and golfed. I used to go to the driving range, and I guess because I wasn't a half bad baseball player, I could hit a golf ball pretty good. Like I could, and the way I looked at it in the driving range is if I hooked it, that's a double down the line.
Right.
If I hooked it, but hit it far, that's a double down the line.
Right.
Yeah. If I sliced it and hit it far, that's an opposite field home run.
Right.
So I could hit the ball pretty good. I just couldn't necessarily hit it straight. Anyway, we get out on, we're golfing, and I meet Yvon Cornway, and he's a very nice man. And we get out on, I think it was on the first tee. I hit a really good drive right straight down the middle of the fairway, like pure shithouse luck.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, that's not bad. Maybe I'll buy some gloves. Maybe I'll buy some clubs and take up this game." And everyone kind of chuckled. And then next hole, I hit one off into the woods, or I just like a completely terrible shot. And Yvonne Cornway goes, "Hey, Ted, are you sure you want to buy those club?" Ha, ha, ha. And I laughed. Ha, ha. And so we get going along, and I think we're on the back nine by this time. And Mark Mintzberg is playing the round of his life, and he's beating Yvonne Cornway. And Yvonne's not happy because he's a competitor. You don't win 10 Stanley Cups without being a competitor. So at one point, he shanks his drive. And I laughed and said, "Hey, Yvonne, maybe I'll buy your clubs." And he turned right around and he goes, "You want to play right now?" And I said, "Yvonne, it's just a joke." And he goes, "I don't take it." And in 30 years since, we still use that all the time. Us and the guys in our circles. I don't take it.
It's become part of our parlance.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we should. I want to make this abundantly clear. One of the nicest men you'll ever want to meet. Oh,
absolutely. And he very quickly came around.
Yes.
He realized that his anger had gotten the best of him, and he very quickly smoothed the waters.
Yeah, him and his wife Evelyn are at so many different charity things. He still represents that sweater very, very well. Has done so for years in the community. He's a wonderful, wonderful man, nice man. But as you point out, you don't get 10 rings without having a competitive side. And our claim to fame was me and the people in my school year at Pierrefonds Comprehensive High School, we all went to school with Evelyn. So,
oh really?
Yeah. So we're familiar with Mrs.
I love
Cornway,
the story.
They're lovely people. The Standing By podcast is supported in part by my friends at Matelas Bonheur. Do you know the story of Matelas Bonheur, Ted?
Well, Matelas Bonheur, does that not mean Happy Meal?
No, sir, it does not. It has to do with a good night's sleep is what it has to do with. And I like the theme. We love family-run businesses, and that's what Matelas Bonheur is. There are a lot of places you can buy a mattress, but the thing that I have always loved about Matelas Bonheur was they started delivering mattresses in the back of a pickup truck years and years and years ago. They started out of a small store that's still there, by the way, on Gouin Boulevard in Saint-Geneviève, just around the corner from La Roulotte. Ted, if you would like to stop by for a hot dog.
Sure.
It is the very first store of a chain that is now owned locally by a local family with 17 locations all across the greater Montreal area. And the thing about Matelas Bonheur is you get greeted with a smile, you get greeted with warmth and manners when you walk into a store that's designed around the amazing mattresses they have. And they have one thing in mind only, and that's to get you a better night's sleep and to make sure that they find you a great mattress within your budget. How's that sound, Ted?
Sounds pretty good to me. Will they come for a sleepover?
I don't know if they'll come for a sleepover, but you wouldn't notice because you'd be so comfortable and asleep on your brand new mattress. If you're looking for a mattress, I know there's lots of places to go, but what you want to do is don't do anything until you visit a Matelas Bonheur store near you. What you do is find the closest location to you by going online, matelasbonheur.ca.
I love the story that you tell about the year the Canadians lost 8 games.
Yeah.
And living in Montreal and being a Canadiens fan. Yeah. And after the morning after a loss, everyone got on the school bus with this stunned look on their face.
Yeah. What happened? They lost. Well, in typical Montreal fashion, we expected them to win every game.
Yeah.
And one year they nearly did.
They did, yeah. They almost did.
Yeah.
I can remember during that era as a kid back in Fredericton watching them on TV, and they'd be down by a goal in the third period.
Yeah.
And you just knew that they were going to tie the game.
Absolutely.
And then they were going to win the game.
Yeah.
And the most classic example of that is the Too Many Men on the Ice game in the playoffs against the Bruins. They're down by a goal. Guy Lafleur scores that famous goal.
That great Danny Gallivan call.
Yeah, rather gingerly.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I think it was Yvon Lambert scored in overtime, and they won the game. That was so typical of the Montreal Canadiens of that era.
Don Cherry never got over it.
No.
While we're talking sports, we've gone down a sports rabbit hole. So
Seems like, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm good with that because our jobs afforded us these opportunities that a lot of people, looked at us and said, "Oh my God," like people have said to me, like. That's not true. Larry Robinson gave you a tour of the Montreal Canadiens dressing room, and that's true. A lot of people could never, you could never dream that, especially the old dressing room, the one that had all the ghosts in it and all the, where Maurice Richard sat and changed his skates. That means a lot to me.
Yeah. There's another story, and I actually had an opportunity. I related this on Twitter the other day because did you see the clip that was on social media of Peter Zosky interviewing Maurice Richard?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I get choked up thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah, the humility and it's classic. It's just, it's like we were talking about earlier about Monsieur Belleville. It's classic guys of that caliber.
Well, the end of that generation as well.
Yeah.
It was when you and I went to Chicago to shoot TV commercials the first time around in 1993. And I think it was when we flew back to Montreal and the plane landed. And of course, everybody gets up and stands. I
forgot about this.
And they wait to get off the plane. So I stand up and I'm standing there and I turn around and right behind me is Maurice the Rocket Richard. And I'm, holy shit. And I just... My default reaction was to stick my hand out.
Yes.
Mr. Richard, my name's Ted Bird. It's an honor to meet you. He blushed.
Yeah.
He shook my hand and blushed.
Yeah. You're now making me
Oi.
These old athletes they'll put a lump in your throat.
Yeah. Well, do you remember we went down when was it him or Jean Belleville who we went down to the Bell Center? They were lying in state.
We did both.
We did, eh?
Yeah, we did. I went. I went to see. I attended both of them, and the story that I don't like to tell, but I'll tell anyway. I got to the Bell Center when Mr. Belleville was lying in state, and his wife and two daughters were there all day. If I recall, I think for 2 days. And when I got to the Bell Center, one of the ushers recognized me and said, "Come with me." And I said, "Thank you, but no, I'm not doing that."
Yeah.
He wanted to take me out of line and squire me, so that I wouldn't have to wait. And I just thought that would have been so disrespectful to the kind of...
Well, it would have gone against everything that he
stood for. Yeah, everything he stood for. Let's get on. Can you tell the...
You don't want to cry some more?
What is that?
Poor Poseidon's over there going, Jesus Christ, they're going to cry. Where did they find these guys?
Stupid old fuckers.
That's what happens when you get older, Poseidon. You get very weepy.
You get very emotional.
Yeah.
You'll see. I want you to tell I want to get off of that and can you just tell you do such a beautiful job of telling the story of the splendid Splinter at practice.
Oh God! Well, that's out of a book. My favorite book of all time. Never mind my favorite sports book. My favorite book of all time, Ball 4 by Jim Bouton. Jim Bouton was a Major League Baseball pitcher, and at the end of his career, he went to the Seattle Mariners in the expansion draft, and he kept a diary of his one season with the Mariners. And he told a story that had been related to him by, what was the catcher's name? Or the guy's name, Jim Pagliarone or something like that, who had played with Ted Williams towards the end of Ted Williams' career, and told a story about Ted Williams, who was probably the best hitter in the history of baseball and was also a war hero. I don't know if many people know that about Ted Williams. He flew combat missions in the Korean War. And I guess a big part of the reason he was such a great combat pilot was and a great baseball hitter was because his eyesight was so good. And great pilots and great hitters both have great eyesight. So anyway, Ted Williams, this guy told the story about Ted Williams would come out to batting practice before anyone else was in the ballpark, just him and the pitcher, the batting practice pitcher. And he would scream at the top of his lungs while he'd hit these line drives out over the right field wall. And the way he told the story was he would go, "I'm Ted fucking Williams, and I'm the greatest fucking hitter who ever lived." Crack! There goes one over the wall. Jesus H. Christ himself couldn't get me out. Whack! Here comes Jim Bunning. Jim fucking Bunning with that little shit slider of his. Does he think he's going to get me out with that shit? Whack! I'm Ted fucking Williams. Crack!
I guess you need that kind of confidence to be Ted Williams.
I guess so, yeah. And that's one of many great stories. Great stories in that book. Yeah. I've read that book about half a dozen times, and you know what? I'm due to read it again.
Yeah.
And it's just so good. And it was a scandal at the time.
Yeah.
When that book came out.
Baseball players hated that
book. Because he told the behind the scenes stories,
right,
about what, life on the team and on the road was really like. And I remember on the back of the copy that my father had, they would have quotes from people, and like Bowie Kuhn, who was the commissioner at the time, his quote was, "Jim Bouton has done a great disservice to the game of baseball." Mickey Mantle, and Bouton told some great stories about Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle's quote was, "Jim who?"
Was there anybody that, listen to me squeaking.
You are squeaking.
Was there anybody that, other than Rocket, was there anybody that flipped you out, that, threw you off because they were just, you couldn't believe you were meeting?
Well, one night, again, back when I was working in Toronto, I was covering a Leafs game. And in the press box at Maple Leaf Gardens, you would have assigned seats. Mm-hmm. So after the first or second period, whatever, I was down in the press room for intermission, and I came back up, and there was someone in my seat, and it was Bobby Orr.
Jesus.
And this was after he had retired, and I guess he was just there as, I don't know what capacity he was there in, but Bobby Orr was sitting in my chair. And I kind of stood there and I looked at him, and he turned around and he looked at me and he goes, "Am I in your chair?" And I said, "It's your chair now. You're Bobby Orr."
Do you remember the morning he called us?
I sure do. I'll never forget that.
I will never forget that. Ted and I, when we were working at the Mix, we had a contest.
It was called Who Do You Know?
Who Do You Know? And the way the contest worked was you got somebody famous to phone us, and at the end, I think, of 2 weeks or whatever it was, a month, we would choose, the most famous person to phone us, won, I think, money or something.
Yeah, whoever got that person to phone would win the prize.
Right. So, we spoke to, who's the monkey lady there? It's not monkey lady.
Jane Goodall?
Yes.
Did she call?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, Jane Goodall called.
Wow.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call her the monkey lady, but you know what
I knew exactly who you meant.
This is how long we've been together. Jane Goodall called. I can't. There were so many of them. I can't remember.
I only remember that
Bobby
morning.
Orr. And I remember we were sitting. Ted and I sat on one side of the glass, and our great and wonderful producer Tommy Butto was on the other side of the glass. Tom Butto was a producer at FM 96 and Mix 96 and Virgin for many, many, many years. Yeah. And he was so good at what very, 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 an excellent producer who got along with everybody. And it didn't matter what morning show they threw at him.
Yep.
He got along. I loved Tommy. And that morning, your producer could talk in your ear. He could push a button and quietly say to you off the air, "You sound stupid," or "Don't say that," or "Did you fart?
You suck."
Yeah, exactly. And try and throw you off your game. And this one morning, he said, "Bobby Orr's on the phone," and it stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah,
I was like, "What?" Because there's what is it? The word I'm looking for? There's an aura about him.
Yeah.
You know this because you stood behind him. When you stand in front of Bobby Orr, there's an aura about him.
Yeah, and another guy who, like Belleville,
yes,
just the nicest person.
Yeah,
and humble.
Yeah,
and doesn't carry himself like he's anything special. Well, when in fact he's everything
special.
Yeah.
He didn't. He obviously didn't throw you off your game, though. You had a quick comeback.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. It was,
so you really haven't been thrown by anybody.
Well, I mean, not thrown necessarily, but I was certainly taken aback.
Yeah.
The most famous person I've ever met is Prince Charles.
Oh,
yeah.
Do tell.
I was at the Black Watch Armory. I've had a long-standing relationship with the Black Watch Regiment, the Royal Highland Regiment, Black Watch of Canada, and Prince Charles is their honorary colonel. And so when he came and visited about, 10 years ago maybe, I got an invitation. And so I got to meet him and his wife, Camilla Parker Bowles. They are the Duke and Duchess of
Arfland.
Windsor, I believe.
I think so. Yeah.
Anyway, so what they do at these receptions is they make little pods of 6 or 8 people, and Charles and Camilla started at one end of the room, and each one went in opposite directions and worked their way around.
Oh, is that the way they do
it? They stop at each pod, and they address each person, and it was fascinating.
Wow.
To see how he had obviously been trained in how to deal with the peons. Mm-hmm. And what he is trained to do is he asks you something about yourself, and then he takes information from whatever you've told him, and he throws that back at you, and it makes you feel as if like, hey, he's interested in me. He knows something about me. Because when he got to me, he said, and are you a former member of the regiment? And I said, no, I'm a friend of the regiment. I'm a broadcaster. And he turns to my wife at the time, Danielle, and he goes, so is he ever home, or is he always off broadcasting somewhere? And he was, they were both very friendly and charming. And they, I know that they're trained. Yeah. But they look you in the eye and they listen to what you say, and then they say something back to you that demonstrates to you that they actually did listen and have an interest in what you had to say.
Ted, I don't think it's going to surprise too many people that when we told the Mersons we were going to do a podcast, they said we would like to support said podcast.
We have been associated with the Mersons for 30 years now, and with good reason. They do what they do well, and they do it with honesty, and that's why we got on board with them. And we're glad that they're on board with us for the podcast just in time, assuming that you're listening to this before September 25th, 2021, just in time for the 4th annual tire blowout sale. Now, in years gone by, this has also included a barbecue. I spoke with Kara Merson. She said that's COVID dependent, but I will say this. I'm going to show up at the tire sale with hot dogs, cold hot dogs, loose in my pocket. And if they don't have a barbecue, you can have one of my cold hot dogs. They might have some lint on them. I don't know. But you're more than welcome to them. Hot dogs or no, you'll save big on tires. Up to $70 in rebates on Yokohama tires. They partner with Merson for this tire sale. You also get free installation and balancing if you buy your tires that day at the tire sale. And if you're one of the first 50 people there who buys something, you'll get a $50 gift card to spend at Merson throughout the year.
You can call them at 487-5545 or visit mersonauto.com. You know, you and I in the first podcast talked about being raised similarly.
He's hammered, Poseidon.
Brought my flask. Did you
get his keys?
Did you you feel the same way that I do? That's still important to me. When somebody looks you in the eye, when you meet somebody and you look them in the eye and you extend your hand for a handshake, you know, that not only if you're part of the royal family, I think it's.
Well, I think that will always be important.
Always
I think
be
that's
important.
it's common courtesy.
Yeah.
It's human decency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the morning Danny Gallivan was with us?
I remember meeting Danny Gallivan on a couple of occasions.
Oh,
yeah.
I never met Danny Gallivan. That I think I would.
Oh, well, there's another good story. The very first game I ever covered at the Montreal Forum in 1985, I went with Rick Moffat. Rick and I both worked in the sports department at FM 96 at the time. And we were in the press room before the game having one of the famous press room hamburgers. Well, they had hamburgers, too, in the press room,
Wow.
And in walks Danny Gallivan, and he marches right over to our table, and he sits down, and he goes, "Well, who are these two young men? I've never met you before."
Come on.
And Moffat and I are looking at each other like, is this really happening? And then he just starts regaling us with hockey stories.
My God.
The most one-sided fight I ever saw, Milt Schmidt and Dickie Moore, the Boston Garden, 1959.
That's really good, Ted.
Oh, God.
And his you're giving me goosebumps because if he sat beside me, and did that, I mean, people say to us, because we've been doing it for so long, I recognize your voice, or it's weird to hear your voice. To hear that voice live at a table?
Jesus. Can you imagine?
Jesus Lord.
And that year, he was named Irishman of the Year.
Wow.
For the St. Patrick's Day parade.
Holy
so he came into the studio at FM 96 where I was working, and I got to sit down and interview him one-on-one for about 20 minutes.
You know what I lament is that we didn't take a lot of pictures back in the day.
Yeah. We didn't have phones. And we didn't carry our cameras around with us. Dick Irvin, Danny Gallivan's longtime broadcast partner, who lives in retirement in Point Claire.
Yes.
I bumped into him at the IGA probably a year to 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And another guy had just salted the earth.
Yeah, just a wonderful man.
He stood there and talked to me for like 15 minutes.
Yeah. One of my I've had a number of encounters with Dick Irvin, and he's just such a lovely man and a very, very proud broadcaster who was very, very, very good at what he did and could do almost anything on radio and television. I was at a hockey game with Sugar Sammy one night, and Sugar Sammy, as you know, on both sides of the language divide in Montreal, is a big star, both sides.
And outside of Montreal, increasingly big star worldwide.
Big star worldwide. I can't walk down the street in Paris, for example. Anyway, we had been watching the game, and as we were leaving the game and we were making our way through the through the Bell Center after leaving our seats, I said to Sammy, "Now, step gingerly and quickly, because you're going to get stopped. We'll never get out of here." We were walking, and we heard Dick Irvin say, "Terry and Sugar Sammy," and I turned around.
Don't you mean Terry and Sugar Sammy?
There you go. Thank you. And we turned around. We had a conversation with Dick and his grandson. And when we walked away, Sugar Sammy was shaking. He said, "I can't believe Dick Irvin recognized me."
Yeah, how
he
about
was
that,
so.
Well, that's similar. Yeah, similar to the Larry Robinson telling me that he
Yes.
listened to me on the radio.
Yeah.
You know what? I just thought of something like those. We talk about those old legendary guys and the old media guys and the old play-by-play guys and how classy they were. The Montreal Canadiens today have one of the nicest, classiest guys in the business as their radio voice in Dan Robertson.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know if you've met Dan.
I've had many exchanges with Dan because he wasn't in the building very often before I was retired. So we had a lot of exchanges via email and on Twitter. Dan was a fan of mine, and I'm a mutual admirer. He is not only so good at what he does, he brings a warmth to that microphone that is missing, especially today.
Yep.
In a lot of, and this is just my personal opinion, in a lot of the yelling and screaming that we hear now on play-by-play calls, the over the top, the kind of.
I know exactly what I know exactly what you're talking about. Trying to be the center of attention. You're not the center of attention. You're the one who's supposed to be describing what's going on. And Dan, you're not the thing that's going on.
And that's what Dan brings to the microphone. Yeah. He's so good at it, and you can feel his maritime kindness when he talks.
I was going to say that's something he has in common with Danny Gallivan, both from Nova Scotia. And you can also hear Dan's hard R's, too.
Yeah, you can.
Although you won't hear them as much now that the Canadians have lost Thomas Tatar. And I can say that because I'm from down east, too, and I've still got the hard R's. Yeah. Hey, speaking of nice guys, we haven't mentioned Nino and Renato yet from Land Rover Jaguar Laval. Segway boy.
Hey, how about that?
This podcast is brought to you by Land Rover Jaguar Laval and Nino and Renato DiCubelis, whom Terry and I have known for these many years, run that place. And they run it not unlike a household because everybody is treated like family, whether an employee or a customer. They all get the family treatment, and that's what makes that dealership stand out among many.
I have to tell you something. Ted and I talked about doing this for a few months and wondered what kind of reception we were going to get. And the reception that we got from the folks in Laval was spectacular. They have been encouraging, and they have been excited about the podcast. And when we had our first meeting, they even bought us lunch at Milano's.
Well, I think that we can chalk the whole thing up to my charm, because let me tell you the story. Adrian McGrath is the marketing director at Land Rover Jaguar Laval, and before we started the podcast, I was driving down the highway one day, and this beautiful Jaguar drove by, and I thought, you know what? I'll bet you that Jaguar Land Rover Laval might be interested in sponsoring a podcast if Terry and I do one. So I dialed the number, and I got Adrian on the phone, and I said, Adrian, I'm out on the highway, and I just saw a beautiful Jaguar, and it made me think of you, not because it's a Jaguar, but because it's beautiful.
Oh, hey, how about that?
And she went, yeah.
Listen, Ted and I, this particular weekend that we're recording this, I'm being squired around in the Land Rover Defender, which I don't know how they've managed to do this, but they've managed to make that size of a truck elegant.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And the Defender, historically, that was the one you'd see on Tarzan.
Yes, that's right.
Going through the jungle. That was a hardcore, almost military style vehicle. And it can still do that. It can still take you through the jungle if that's what you want to do. But if you're more inclined to the urban jungle, well, it'll squire you around there very nicely as well. It's a beautiful luxury vehicle.
It still can.
Did I say that?
Listen, it's worth the drive to Laval. And as I like to say, when you're up there, you know what? Just go up there to have a look at the McLarens.
Oh, boy.
In the showroom. It's spectacular. And I've shown restraint. Because restraint?
You still have restraint?
I still have restraint because every time you say Nino, I want to say the Pinto and the Santa Maria. So I'm just let me see if I can do it.
Sorry, Nino.
Okay, sorry, Nino. Here we go.
Yes.
Land Rover Jaguar Laval.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
Nicely done. We've been training Terry not to say Jaguar.
Thank you very much to the folks there.
Jaguar sounds like a website.
Yes.
You guys on Jaguar yet? I was on for a while, but they blocked me.
Did you follow with much glee and excitement, the Canadians' run to the Stanley Cup?
I thought it was, for me, I enjoyed that run to the Stanley Cup final, even though they didn't win. And this just goes to show you how times and expectations in Montreal have changed. That was the most fun I had watching hockey since 1971. Which was Ken Dryden's coming out party, and they unexpectedly knocked off the powerhouse Boston Bruins, who were similar to that Canadiens team you were talking about that only lost 8 games.
Yes.
That was the year that Phil Esposito broke every record in the books, got 76 goals and 152 points. Nobody was going to beat the Bruins. The Canadiens brought Ken Dryden out of nowhere. He backstopped them to the Stanley Cup championship in 1971, and it was exhilarating. And so was this year's run up until the final when they got blown out by Tampa Bay.
I must admit it's going to be interesting to watch this year with all the changes and all the injuries. I have such deep admiration for Shea Weber as a hockey player and a leader. It's going to be interesting to see what transpires there.
Yeah. We better get going.
What?
We've been going on like your Aunt Edna's ass. Who said that? In what movie?
I don't.
It was you were the one who. It was Jason Robards.
Parenthood.
Yes. Yeah.
It goes on like your Aunt Edna's ass. It never ends. He was talking about being a dad. He was saying how you never get to spike the ball.
Oh, good.
And by the way, if you're ever looking for a rainy day movie, that's a terrific movie with a terrific
Does it stand
cast.
the test of time?
I think it does because it's timeless because it's about family and how families stick together. And Jason Robards is the patriarch. It's one of Ron Howard's first movies.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Ron Howard directed it, and it's absolutely terrific. And that's where Aunt Edna's ass comes from.
Yeah.
On the next podcast, who the Christ knows?
Well, seriously, we weren't supposed to talk about anything we talked about on this one.
All right. See you next time.